All right. So let's just kind of check some things out here, make sure it's all kind of up and running for us. All right, cool. And it seems good to go. So yeah, man, saw across the Spider-Verse tonight. I'm genuinely curious what the general public opinion on this movie is gonna ultimately end up being. If you look it up on Rotten Tomatoes right now, it's like a 90, it's like a solid 95, like 98 from legitimate audience and critics. However much you want to take those Rotten Tomatoes scores into account. Yeah, it seems like sometimes people like to play them up for their favor, and sometimes they like to play against it. But to be honest with you, man, I went, I saw it. It was like 5:30. I guess it was the premiere in my area. It was 5:30, and it was a pretty packed house. You had all ages, a lot of kids there, a lot of families for sure, just probably based on the early timing and everything like that. You had some real mixed reactions, especially at the end. So I'm not going to get into like any major spoilers or anything like that, but I will say that that's not too much of a spoiler, right? To tell you that the end got a lot of mixed reactions from the audience. I'm really genuinely curious to see how that's perceived. Overall, I didn't really like it that much. I didn't really like it that much. I thought it kind of sucked, to be completely honest with you. And my reasoning for that is it did not really do anything differently than the first movie. You literally, in my opinion, besides maybe the small moments you spent in I guess there'll be some small spoilers for this. You could probably guess they spend some time in other Spider-Man multiverse universe area, mainly New York, but just done differently, as you can imagine. That's of course where Spider-Man should be, in Manhattan, or I suppose Brooklyn. uh, but yeah, they do a great job with like the alternate universe stuff, like when they're showing the futuristic place that Miguel's from, Spider-Man 2029, 2099. Uh, pretty great. And yeah, like I liked when Miles jumps out of the building at one point. A small spoiler, jumps out of a building at one point, tries to latch onto something, but it's the future. So there's no tall buildings. It's like very ecological, and there's a lot of flying cars and stuff, which kind of makes sense. There would be super tall buildings with a lot of flying cars going around and everything. So he ends up having to latch onto a flying car. Get a little bit of a Back to the Future, I guess, like sketching kind of a throwback there. But yeah, and then you also have another pretty long sequence in an alternate Spider-Man universe, an alternate version of Manhattan that I really enjoyed. I thought that that was one of the most fun parts of the movie, being in a totally differently imagined version of New York and a different version of Manhattan. But you know, the movie doesn't actually do a whole lot of that, though. As it turns out, you really kind of only get that one sequence. And another thing I'll say in regards to like being in like the future and the Spider-Man 2099. So I will also say, for the sake of this, there's some drinking going on, but amongst other things, uh, but there'll also be the spoilers for at least the trailer. So you must know that in Across the Spider Verse, Miles comes in contact with, like the Spider Verse network. I would have to look it up here, but to find out exactly what they're called, the like arachnid multiverse network or whatever. There's a pretty funny line about it in the movie. I definitely enjoyed that. But yeah, so in this movie, there's obviously a multiverse of spider people, and we'll definitely say people because there's for sure I would be willing to guess a lot more Spider Women in this movie than Spider Men. I mean, I'd be curious to like kind of like go through it slowly. Maybe EFAP can do this for us or something like that. Every frame of pause, and count how many women to men Spider people there are throughout the entirety of the whole movie, all those background shots. There's definitely got to be a lot of fun stuff to pick out in those background shots for sure. But yeah, so there's like, the Council of Reeds. If you're familiar with Rick and Morty, the Council of Ricks, there's a entire multiverse police force of spider people, looking out for it. Certainly, at least all the spider related multiverse villains and events. And that is definitely worth mentioning here too. And again, these are rambling, so we're kind of going to jump around a little bit. Uh that's a big thing in this movie. You got all the different multiverse shenanigans going on with these Spider-Man villains, which I'll give this movie a lot of credit. It definitely kind of weaves in the whole bullshit, let's just be honest, bullshit that's been going on with the MCU and the multiverse and Spider-Man No Way Home. And they weave that in nicely. There's the obligatory line. They literally reference both Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and of course the MCU Spider-Man movies in this movie as a part of the Spider-Verse. But they refer to the fact that all of the Spider-Man universes are experiencing a problem across all the multiverses, mainly this whole crossing of villains, different people getting kind of zapped into different timelines. I'll give the movie credit here. Doesn't go into too much detail about how all of that is working. You're definitely, I mean, if you're gonna sit there and think like, oh, like why are they distorting sometimes, and then there's a little bit of technology to explain it, but like I don't know. There's definitely moments where you're kind of like, okay, well, like if they're in that universe, then why aren't they distorting and like going back and stuff like that? But they don't go into it too much, so you can really forgive, you can really forgive them for it. Uh, but there's this whole council of Reeds, there's this whole council of Ricks, there's this whole council of spider people, and that's kind of like the big push in this movie. The whole idea that they are trying to repair all of this multiverse shenanigans that's at least going on within the Spider-Man universe. And so Miles, again, kind of keeping it light, spoiler, is at the center of that. You can imagine being his first movie into the Spider-Verse, a multiverse story. He has a lot to do with a lot of this whole like ripping of timelines and crossing over of things and all that kind of stuff. On that note, I really enjoyed the like main villain in this movie, Spot, right? I'm getting that right, correct? It is Spot and not like Dot or something like that. Yeah, it is Spot. I I really genuinely liked Spot in this movie. I thought that it was really cool to, so like again, light spoilers here. You have this arc with the villain of like, oh, stupid, dumb shit villain you do not care at all about. When he first shows up on the scene, you're like, well, whatever. But it evolves throughout the story, and he becomes more powerful, and a lot of like the whole like doubting of him kind of plays into the whole idea that like he's motivated to be more powerful. And Jason Schwartzman is really funny as him. I'm not gonna lie, I was like sitting there listening, I'm like, they didn't get like Ryan Reynolds to do Spot, did they? And look, I'm sitting in the back corner of this theater. There's literally me, and it was a packed house, but here where I am, there's literally me, an empty seat, and one other guy. So I just kind of pull it out real quick and look and see it's Jason Schwartzman. He was, but I don't know. I mean, maybe you agree, maybe you don't. I feel like he was doing a bit of a Ryan Reynolds type impersonation with his Spot. But I did ultimately enjoy him in this movie. I thought that he was an interesting villain. I kind of liked that backstory. His powers start off as being like really like redacted and stupid. Like he breaks into like just a neighborhood corner store. So that automatically paints this scene for you that okay, he's like a low level villain. He's robbing a corner store. Like I mean, you're not going to see the Green Goblin robbing a corner store, right? So he's robbing this corner store and he's like trying to dot an ATM out of the corner store. This happens this happens in the first half an hour of the movie, and I'll explain why that's so far into the movie when it sounds like it should be like the first scene. Um so he's just trying to disappear this ATM out of the store so he can get the money out of it and steal it because he's like obviously deformed. He can't get a regular job and everything like that. So he explains he's turned to a life of crime. That obviously attracts Miles' attention. They fight. Really starts off a lot of stuff. Oh, you don't recognize me. You created me. I genuinely enjoyed that. I like the Batman Joker esque dynamic there of he has created his nemesis. And yeah, I'm kind of onto something there. Joker and Batman, right? Miles and Spot. This whole he's kind of goofy. You don't take him seriously. Excuse me, but he's actually got some really vindictive ideologies and ideas going on for him. We are kind of chugging these beers down, so you will have to deal with that occasionally. I promise. I find it disgusting too. I will keep that to a minimum. Uh, so anyway, Spot pretty good. Jason Schwartzman as him. Really enjoyed him. Miles, I like Miles. Miles is great in this movie. I've always enjoyed Miles Morales in this iteration, the Spider Verse. I should I should start. I feel like I've been shitting on this movie a little bit, and I should start by saying that I really love Into the Spider Verse. So I'm big time Raimi, Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man guy. I like the Marvel movie Spider-Man movies. I definitely really enjoyed the reunion and everything with No Way Home. Not maybe not even my favorite MCU Spider-Man movie, but I did really enjoy it, especially the second half. But I love Spider-Man 2 in particular. That's my favorite Spider-Man movie. Really, really enjoy it. Second is Spider-Man 1, but I would almost even say like Spider-Man the animated series like takes that second place of like my thought of like good Spider-Man or what I consider my Spider-Man. Again, that's just where I grew up, my timeline and all that. And then it's Into the Spider-Verse for me. I love that movie as well. I think that's a cool story. I think it's the only story that's done this multiverse thing of late well, where it's actually like kind of decent, you're interested in it, and it's not just like total like cornball cheese crap. So I like Into the Spider Verse. Across the Spider Verse, mm, not so much. And again, getting back to kind of my original point, it doesn't do anything, at least in my opinion, that the first one didn't do besides spending like a little more time in other Spider-Man universes. And it's cool because you do get like this glimpse of Manhattan in a totally different light, where it's like a totally different culture. And it's like, great, that's a great example of what if the world was different in this slight small way. What does that look like? What does Spider-Man look like in that version of New York? All that kind of stuff. That's really cool. But again, that's like one scene in this movie. And then you spend a lot of time in the future, like again, Council of Reeds esque place where all the Spider-Man are meeting up across the multiverse, but there's not a whole lot else. And the thing about that is that like this second one, like again, like maybe I'm really fucking off here, but it feels like it's just like kind of like this collection of Spider-Man bits. Like the first one is this really heartfelt story, right? Like Miles is this kid. He's already kind of struggling in where he's at. He doesn't feel like he fits in at the school he's at, even though he's smart enough and he's capable of doing the work. He just doesn't identify with the culture, with the path that he's on, all that kind of stuff. He really loves his uncle. His uncle is a little bit more edgy and all that kind of stuff. He's a supervillain, Prowler. He gets bit by the spider, as we find out in this movie, accidentally because that spider is from another dimension. Although that's not a spoiler, we already knew that that spider was not from his dimension. It came from the particle accelerator, and bit him and gave him his powers. But anyway, uh, you know, all that stuff is really good. You have this arc. He gets these powers. It's very similar to the classic Spider-Man story. The Spider-Man in his universe dies as a result of saving him from this particle accelerator in the first place. Other spider people come and mentor him and teach him and even kind of challenge him, and at a certain point, right, like bully him into realizing, like, like, you're not that tough, and maybe you really aren't going to be able to hang. And I mean, you can kind of take that message a few different ways for sure. But I mean, I took that ass kicking as like, yeah, man, like, you little bitch, fucking get your shit together. If I got my ass kicked by five alternate reality versions of me that were like all completely different than me too, like they weren't even remotely close to being how I was, and they all kicked my ass, I'd definitely go home and be like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? Seriously here, right? Maybe that I don't careful what you wish for, right? But so, like, Miles figures it out though. He obviously realizes he's pretty freaking special, man. He's got electrical abilities. He can turn invisible. That's pretty OP. Uh and he makes it work, man. The whole movie comes together. It goes on this really, really nice journey. They come together, they support him. There's a lot of like personal sacrifice. This movie, I'm telling you, like, it's like it's like the movie Airplane. If you have ever watched the movie Airplane, that's a pretty bold assumption these days of a lot of people, maybe. But if you've seen that movie, series of bits, really, really funny, and actually kind of well we've just this is not a great analogy. Maybe that movie 42, or what the fuck was that movie called? It was all numbers, but movie 42, I think it was something like that. It was not the Jackie Robinson story. uh but my point being, I'm gonna have to look this up now. Movie 40. Okay, it's movie 43 to be fair, and then there was the movie 42. So I'm not actually that. I was really thinking I was really off base with that. So it's like movie 43. That's a much better analogy. Just like really dumb, incoherent stuff that doesn't totally mesh. That's not the best analogy either, because there's a lot of entertaining stuff in Across the Spider Verse. And again, we're having a couple of drinks here. We're just kind of rambling. Uh, I like a lot of the stuff. Spider Woman, pregnant Spider Woman. Despite the fact that I know there's going to be a lot of people out there like, Issa Rae in this, Jessica Drew. Let's be real. There's going to be a lot of people that complain about her. My thoughts are her presentation is a little bit like blunt. Yeah, let's use that for the channel. It's really blunt. Her presentation is really blunt. It's obvious. It's like right on the head. There's no deafness to it whatsoever. But she's actually I didn't really mind her that much as a character. I liked her arc in this. Again, like, light spoilers. You'll find, like, quickly into watching the movie, you'll see, like, she's like Miguel's right hand spider person. They are like almost like cohorts together in their little mission. And as you can imagine, the trailer kind of pitches it this way too. Miles is sort of opposed to this group in some way. And she has a nice story of like coming along and realizing, like, oh, look, maybe what I'm doing is kind of fucked up. Like, I don't really know about all this. So I personally actually really, really enjoyed this character in the movie. I enjoyed Jessica Drew. I thought that her presentation, a little bit cringe, but her character really, really nice. Like, all the little sidekicks are pretty nice. Spider Punk, yeah, fine. I'm not even gonna touch that one. I'm not even gonna touch that one. I thought he was fine. I think that a lot of people are gonna have a lot of things to say about that one too. But I enjoyed him. He's cool. He's kind of disaffected. again, you got some cringe lines, like I don't know. He's doing that whole you just graduated college and yeah, you really wish the world was like that, huh? Don't you? But to be fair, that's pretty fucking punk rock. So not I'll be clear. I like Punk Spider-Man. He was fine. He's like the serious black esque character. Like the older mentor supports him, kind of sees things from a different light, all that kind of stuff. All right, you know what? Let's talk about the fact that into the across the Spider-Verse begins with, I did not check my watch or anything, but I think about like 10 to 12 minutes of Spider-Gwen. And I liked Spider-Gwen in the first movie, but she's kind of an insufferable dick in this movie. Like, no, really, like, is it just me, or is she kind of like less likable in this movie than she was the first time around? I I mean, again, maybe I need to go back, rewatch it. I have seen the first one a full way through 2 times and a dozen times more, just in like clips and snippets. Just on TV. It's been on TNT a lot lately, but like, so you open up, you get your 15 minutes, you're really focusing on Gwen. It's like, all right, we're gonna get some Gwen here. That's fine. I enjoyed her in the first movie. She's giving you her story. I'm, digging it. She's talking about her relationship with Peter, all that kind of stuff. And light spoilers here, I'll tell you. So skip over this. I promise I'll be done in 2 minutes. So at 2:25, you can skip to. Light spoilers here though. She's friends with Peter. Peter obviously gets to know her dad. And Gwen and Peter are, really close. They're growing up together. Peter ends up developing the lizard serum. And I will be honest, like, I've read me some Marvel. I've never been a Spider-Man comic book guy. I just haven't. I've never read a Spider-Man comic book. Love the guy in movies, love the guy in shows. Just never pick one up. That's just the truth. Is that a storyline that happens in the comics? Peter becomes the lizard at some point, but he basically like school shooting. School shooting. I don't know if you could say that on YouTube, but in Minecraft, school shooting incident where he shows up as a lizard and attacks his bullies, and of course Gwen has to stop him from being a monster like a freaking terrorist. And in the result, a bunch of shit falls on Peter. That's how he dies in her universe. Her dad finds Peter dead, being so close to Gwen. He's very upset, sees Spider Woman there, tries to arrest her. She runs off, and thus begins this whole antagonism between her and her dad. That's Gwen's storyline. She has this whole thing with her dad. Gets cornered. You go through the movie, you see that she's continuing to fight crime and stuff like that. Again, this is all in the first like 10 to 12 minutes. It's the Spider Gwen movie for the very beginning of it, and she's going through her life fighting crime. Her dad eventually ends up catching her, at a crime scene where she's helping save people. She's all exhausted. There's like a multiverse vulture that's, attacking the scene. And that's when she gets introduced to her multiverse team, Miguel and, Jessica Drew. And, no, yeah, okay. I think that's all that shows up for that first one, Jessica Drew and Miguel. But she gets introduced to them. They end up saving the day. She's obviously very exhausted from it. Her dad corners her. And yeah, that's definitely another message with this movie. Whether you agree with it or not, big time message of the police. No, no. No, no, no. And that's how we'll put it. Police, no, no, no in this movie. Even if they're your dad. Especially if they're your dad. Yeah, so her dad, obviously, she gets cornered. It's like, I kind of like this moment. She takes her mask off. She's like, "Dad, it's me. It's Gwen. You killed Peter. I didn't kill Peter." Ba ba ba. Two things here. One, like he's a police officer. He's been investigating this whole thing. There's nobody that has talked about like the fact that the lizard attacked everybody. And I know like maybe they all like got evacuated and left before he got the ceiling collapsed. Peter got the ceiling collapse on him and went from being the lizard back into Peter. And then again, you find Peter's dead body and you think that she did it. But like you find a dead body in a room where the lizard attacked and Spider Woman's there. Like, why can't Spider Woman be like, he was the lizard? He was the lizard. I mean, she was upset at the time, but fuck, man, she fucked herself on that. Like, I don't know, man. I think you do a little bit of investigative work. You'd be like, this kid Peter mess around with lizard stuff at all ever? Did did the lizard attack anyone that used to pick on Peter? Look, again, not trying to nitpick it to death, but kind of interesting. So she's got him. He's got her cornered. He's trying to arrest her. She's pleading with him as her daughter. I'm sure it choked a lot of people up. I thought it's kind of corny. Uh, and the multiverse people are like, well, bro, we can stop your dad here, and you can come with us, and you don't have to deal with all this. Of course, she takes that option. I mean, who wouldn't? So Gwen joins that team. Then you finally get back to Miles, who, kind of classic Spider-Man. He's working out being Spider-Man. He's dealing with these classic responsibilities, mainly school, not quite keeping up with it, especially attendance. And it's a struggle for him. His parents know that he's struggling. He's kind of struggling with telling them, really being honest with them, and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty decent stuff. But again, like this movie's kind of like going from like random bit to random bit. So like what I mean, like for example, like you go back to Miles and he's like literally like, just sequence after sequence of him like saving the day, like doing his thing because he's on his way to a little counseling session. And think about the counseling session and like it's like his college counselor. He's like, you're like, okay, like he's getting distracted. His parents are like, oh no, like we don't know what's taking him so long. He's got to like get here to like be able to do his like assignment, and he keeps getting distracted. So you should feel some level of like edge, like, oh fuck, Miles, like get to that appointment, man. Like you really want to go to college. I know you do. So yeah, better make it. But like he gets there and they're pissed, but like it's no big deal. you know, he's totally fine. Just kind of showing up and getting there and then explaining like, yeah, I'm kind of figuring it out, but I think I've got it together, so you don't really have to worry about me. And I mean that's all well and good, but again, if you felt any tension at all in that previous scene where he was trying to get there for like a good long while, then you don't really need to be feeling that anymore because turns out it was totally fine. Guidance counselor is actually pretty crafty. Turns out she was just kind of gonna make up like the story anyway, based on what feels like pretty racist assumptions. She's like, yeah, I'll just say you guys are like from an underprivileged part of Brooklyn, and he's like an immigrant kid, and she's like, yeah, we're not like immigrants. Like, like that's not the case with our with our family. Counselor doesn't care, She's just like, yeah, let's get him into college, and his parents are cool with it. I mean, that's pretty chill. There's actually a few moments in this movie where you're like, yeah, that's actually kind of realistic. So I can very much respect them for going that route. Give me 1 second here. Actually, I just got to get myself a bottle opener. Oh, all right. So if you're following along, have another drink, open up another one, take another shot. And if you're sober, don't do any of that. God, what are you thinking? So yeah, that's the thing. Like this movie doesn't have the punch that the first movie had. You're like it's like everything that happens in the first movie has so much weight to it. You're like, oh fuck, man! Like Spider-Man's dead. Like Miles is like got the responsibility to be Spider Person now because like he's got the fucking power. Oh my god. This movie though, not so much. So he ends up getting to the counseling thing late. Yeah, totally ends up being fine. He goes on a little bit later in the movie. He's got to get to his family. His dad's like graduation or something like that. His certificate. I'm not gonna lie. He like well, I guess they're celebrating. I'm stupid. They're celebrating him becoming the new police captain. And that's like a big thing in this movie is, as you know, in the Spider-Man canon, often there's a police captain that Spider-Man's close to that suffers some type of massive tragedy that ends up shaping his relationship and overall outlook as a hero. That I don't read Spider-Man comics, but I do know that much about the character of Spider-Man, especially from this movie. So you know they're celebrating him becoming captain. I guess he obviously had to like study for all that and like pass a bunch of like classes and like certificates and all that shit. And again, like he's got to get the cake. He's being Spider Man. It's taking a while. He gets the cakes all messed up. He shows up there. It's good that he showed up, but he shows up late. The cakes are messed up. Again, his parents are like, "What the hell is up with you, man? Like, like you're really slacking off here, and we don't realize that you're a superhero." Which is always a great arc for a Spider-Man story. It's one of the things that is not kind of like driven home enough with the MCU Spider-Man. That is that is for sure. So like again, all the stuff with Miles, I enjoy. Gwen comes back to the party. He sees her. He ends up getting in a big fight with his parents. Gets grounded. Gwen shows up. He disappears with Gwen. Obviously, that's a little bit of a problem. But they kind of forgive him when he comes back with Gwen because they're like, "Oh, he's with a girl. No wonder." Maybe she showed up and like popped into his room. Like, is that a thing in New York? The girls just pop into your room, man. Jeez. Whew. Oh my god. Uh, well, whatever. They accept it. And yeah, man, Miles and Gwen are reunited. We find out though that the Gwen is there for Spot, who is like wanted for his multiversal powers, and I guess he's kind of doing his power is to do the thing that also happens when like a major event in the Spider Verse that isn't supposed to happen happens, which is like it opens up a black hole basically that things get sucked into God, God knows where. So she's after Spot. She's tracking him down, and obviously she can't be totally truthful with Miles. I will not reveal in this stream why she can't be truthful with Miles, but she can't be truthful with Miles. It has to do with the whole multiverse club that they're in, and obviously you can imagine with Miles and everything. Whew. But yeah, so Gwen comes back into the picture. there's a lot of really cringe stuff with Miles and Gwen. They're going for it, man. But there's just no way to make a dude look good in like a Marvel or Star Wars or Disney movie. They just always have to look so like fucking lame, whack. There's no way. There's no way that like any self-respecting chick would like really fall for them, man. And I don't mean to diss Miles again. I actually really like Miles in this movie, but of course, Gwen is kind of our star here. So Spot is on this mission to take Miles down, man, because he doesn't respect him. And we do find out. So I'll say this: we do find out pretty early on that you know what? Because we're 35 minutes in now. If you made it this far, like shit, man. So full spoilers. Full spoilers. Uh we find out the Spot created Miles. He is a part of the machine that created the whole Into the Spider Verse situation. When Miles blew it up, he was inside there and therefore was created, became Spot. As a result, he ended up obviously becoming a freak of nature with certain abilities. And so he's like hellbent on like getting him, and he's especially slighted that Miles doesn't even remember him. He apparently even threw a bagel at him in Into the Spider Verse, which I will say, like fuck the fact that they retcon the villain into this movie. They're like, it's supposed to be a one-off, but people really liked it. So what the hell should we do? Okay, let's retcon the villain. And I, I again, please let me know. I think Spot is a thing with Miles in the comics, but again, really well done. Actually, in the movie, I got no problem with Spot in this movie. So you got Spot looking for the like ultimate energy. He uses his ability, finds out with his abilities that he can like travel the multiverse. That's why the multiverse police and Gwen are after him. And they end up following him to this big alternate reality, Manhattan, which again, one of the better sequences in the movie. As a result of some things that happen there, they do end up bringing Miles to we'll call it the Citadel, like from Rick and Morty. They end up bringing him to the Citadel, and it's like pretty cool seeing all the different Spider-Men, but it gets tired really quickly. And it's like, okay, so Miles has to come and see them. They gotta explain to him why they've kind of been keeping him out of the club. Obviously, I'll say this, spoiler there, he's not gonna be happy with why they're keeping him out of the club. I know it already said spoilers, but I won't totally spoil it for you. He's not happy with the reason they're keeping him out of the club. It does have to do, again, excuse me, with the whole we're chugging them down here with the whole multiverse problem. So they're like, yeah, you're kind of a part of the multiverse problem. We can't really let you be a part of the whole thing. And he ends up freaking out, escaping from them because they kind of want to contain him and everything. You find out that this place has all these different villains from across the multiverse. They've got Danny Glover from the MCU, a bunch of other villains. You see a hologram of Doc Ock from animated Spider-Man, but I do not know if he was like actually supposed to be in their possession or not. And the whole idea is when they catch these villains, they scan their DNA and send them back to the proper universe. And so, Gwen's showing him around the place. Miguel kind of explains to him like the whole problem with like, Miles and like why like they keep him out of the club in the first place. Obviously, Peter B is there. Shout out to this icon here. Almost out of obligation. Let's be real. Um, I would have honestly maybe even saved him for spoiler alert, the third movie that they're making, Beyond the Spider-Verse. Maybe we'll even show a small clip of this if I can somehow edit that into this. Why not? We got nothing to lose. But Peter B's there, and he's in a pink robe the whole time. So take that with a grain of salt. He's got a baby, and he's in a pink robe the whole time. The whole joke being that he's a new dad. He's very excited about his baby. In fact, there's honestly not a single like guy in this movie who's a Spider-Man alternate version that's besides Spider-Punk that's portrayed particularly well. We got a lot of a certain type of spider person. Like, okay, for example, I'm wondering if people notice this, but There was one moment in this movie that I laughed out loud. And look, for better or worse, it's the truth. I'm very familiar with Spider Woman, and you probably are too. Like, this is the Spider Woman that I grew up with. There's a moment in this movie where Spider Woman dressed like this shows up, but it's a lot more like this. And that was really interesting. Going from this and, like, my mind of like, oh, this, I guess, is kind of what we talk about with like, oh, like, yeah, maybe some people are like, there's problematic ideas here. But, this is what I grew up with. This is the idea. This is what the character was. And now you're giving me something a lot like this. This is not exactly it, but it was very, very similar. So, yeah, we end up in a situation where there's a lot of you know undertoning the message into this thing. It's not overt. It's not like burn your eyes out, terrible. But there's a lot again. There is. I don't care what you're like. I don't care if you're like blue or defund the police. Really, like if you're pro blue, defund the police. I don't care. But don't like regardless of which one of those sides you take, this movie has a very like don't back the blue message, and it's like really freaking obvious, and like it's not even like definitely weaved in there, and it's just kind of weird because like the main character's dad is a cop, and there's kind of this whole thing of like there's even like there's this weird like message like at one point towards the end. I won't even like say who it's specifically registered toward, directed at, but like the idea is like, oh, it's like so good that you gave up being a cop, and the only reason I'm clowning this is because the character literally says to the person before they find out they're not a cop anymore, well, the whole reason you're a cop is that if you weren't, someone horrible would have that badge and not you. It's like, damn, that's a bold assumption. Number one. Like, you think the only thing stopping shit people from becoming cops is the fact that like they're like nice, like your dad or some shit. Like they go through a psychological test. They do. Um but like the whole idea though too that, oh, well, someone shit would be a cop if you weren't a cop. But then this character is really happy that the person's not a cop anymore. And it's very confusing, man. It's really fucking confusing. Uh, like, oh, okay. Here's a major spoiler. Like definitely skip over this to 44. I'll get done this in 30 seconds. Major spoiler here. This movie ends on a fucking cliffhanger. Like it sets up the whole ending, it gets like all ready for the big showdown, and then it's like, nope. And about, I'll say, there was a handful of people in my theater that were like, "Woo, yeah, I love it." So like something like that. And there was a handful of people in my theater that were like, "What the fuck? Like I paid for this? Like you gotta be kidding me." So take that for what you will. All right. All right, that's enough about that. Moving on. So, I do. I wonder if you're going to get some mixed reactions about this movie. The one thing that I can say with like absolute confidence is I'm done with like the multiverse. Again, biggest thing for me, and ramblings. Remember, ramblings. The big thing for me here is none of the charm that the first movie has. It's like you got like a tight cast of alternate spider people working with Miles. There's like a clear goal. They're trying to help him along. There's like really cool villains in it. Again, big spoiler here, maybe not, but the biggest villains you like go up against in this movie are alternate spider people. Like Miles is kind of like against the rest of the spider council, the spider police, whatever you want to call them. And that's all well and good. But when you get down to like action scenes and stuff like that, it's just spider people like shoot webs at each other and like running away from each other and like dodging and stuff like that, and that's cool. But like again, a little bit of villain diversity, weapon diversity, fight diversity goes a pretty long way. I'm just saying. Smoke 'em if you got 'em, boys. So yeah, ultimately, for me, it didn't have the focus, it didn't have the clarity that the original one had. Like it didn't even have like the heart that the original one had. I get like if you're like okay, like I'll say this, like for its credit, if you're like a really massive fan of just like these characters in this iteration, Miles and Gwen, and even Peter B, and you just need more of them, you will fully be like, yeah, like the way I was with Guardians 3, despite my criticisms, you'll be like, yeah, I accept this. This is great. You're not ruining them. Give it to me. This is perfectly fine. But like if you've just seen Into the Spider-Verse and you're like, okay, didn't really need a sequel to that, but like where are we going with Miles now? I don't know, man. Like I watched this and I was like what the fuck? Because like again, like the whole first maybe even 15 minutes is Spider Gwen movie. Okay, fine. Like it is what it is. Then we get some Miles, and you're like, okay, great to be back with Miles. And then you go into some like alternate Spider Verse stuff, which is again pretty cool. But then you go into like the Citadel of again Rick and Morty, which like if you've seen Multiverse of Madness, if you've seen Rick and Morty, if you've read Invincible, the comics, like you've experienced this shit a million times already. So it's like a big fucking deal. Like there's a million fucking Spider-Man. Like if you watch Spider-Man the animated series, you've seen this fucking shit before. Like, oh, a bunch of Spider-Man. Cool. It is cool. But I don't know, man. Like if I did a Spider-Man movie about the multiverse for my first Miles Morales thing, maybe I'd explore space or just like the larger reality that he lives within in the next one. But I get it. It's a multiverse story. That's where you're going with it. Like I can't criticize the concept because there's a lot of things in this movie that I do like. I like the whole idea that like Miles, again, big spoiler here. Skip ahead 10 seconds. Miles is the cause of all the multiverse shenanigans, even some of the stuff in the MCU that you're seeing, like because Miles exists, that's creating it. And that whether you take that as a little bit of a poke at fans that aren't the biggest fans of Miles himself, or you just kind of take it as like, well, it's a great way to like center our character at the middle of a lot of this crap that's been going on. I mean, up to you. Sorry, my came unplugged there. But what I will say is like the legacy characters that exist within this. And again, spoiler here, light spoiler. You get Miles, you get Gwen, you get a lot of Gwen. You maybe almost get more Gwen than you do a Miles. At least equal. And that's fine. Like, but if you're expecting it to be a Miles thing, well, it's also a Gwen thing. And you get some Peter B. A pretty good moment with Peter B and Miles actually that I genuinely quite enjoyed. But outside of that, don't expect the rest of the Spider Verse people to come back in this. They they do come back, but they don't say anything. Like it's just like a like thing at the end. You're like, okay, sure. Again, spoiler alert. Skip ahead 10 more seconds. the 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 end credits thing. They show up for that. You know, big battle. So yeah, man, like you end up having Miles run away. You end up having this story where there's a lot, there's a lot of goofy stuff with the spider people. But the basic thread line is like, here's the whole story if you really want it. Gwen starts off, we get her whole backstory. Her dad catches her. She reveals to him. He doesn't accept her. She disappears with the multiverse people. Miles is being Spider Man in his universe. He's having some troubles with his family. Gwen shows up because she's tracking down Spot Man, or just Spot, I guess, because he can travel the multiverse. Miles and Gwen like each other, so they get distracted. Spot ends up escaping to Mumbattan, the Indian version of Manhattan. Uh, Miles, Gwen, and Spider Man there end up taking on Spot and failing ultimately, as it ends up resulting in them preventing a canon event. Miles saves someone, and I don't know what this dude's name was, but the Gwen Stacy, his reality's dad, Miles saves him, and therefore prevents a canon event from happening, which is really bad because it creates a hole in the spider web that holds them all together, the Spider Verse. So that's one of the reasons they take him in to kind of explain that to him, the importance of it, why Miles himself is a anomaly because the spider that bit him, as we actually knew from the first movie, which I'll give the movie credit here, we did know this. It was kind of explained. The spider is from a different reality, so it bit him, gave him his powers, and as a result, there's a whole reality out there that doesn't have a Spider-Man. So therefore, they need to just kind of ignore Miles. That's why they explained that he wasn't invited to their club and all this stuff. They end up going after Miles because they find out that he has to watch his dad die. Like that's a thing that has to happen. He's like, oh, I want to stop that. Obviously, anyone will stop that. They go after him. There is a long sequence of spider people going after him. Take it for what you will. Again, that's where you get like horse Spider-Man, cat Spider-Man, Tyrannosaurus Rex Spider-Man. It's just like a lot over and over again, in my opinion. And so, in the end, Miles gets away. He gets back to the machine that takes you back to your reality. I did mention earlier they scan the villains that they've caught, and they test their DNA and then send them back to the reality that their DNA is from. So Miles gets in the machine, tests his DNA, sends it back to the reality it reads his DNA for. They're trying to stop him, but they don't. Gwen's like, okay, I know his reality. I'm going to go there. We find out that Miles has traveled to not his reality, but the reality his spider is from, where Miles himself is the Prowler. His dad is dead, and his uncle, the Prowler, is actually alive. So that's where we leave Miles. Excuse me. That's where we leave Miles face to face with himself, with dreadlocks, as the Prowler begging for himself to help him save his alternate reality dad. And that's pretty much where the movie ends. Gwen gathers together the former Spider-Verse team and the new Spider-Verse people on the team. And you also have again, I'm sorry, I'm just not familiar with the character. Jessica Drew, she ends up coming around. She joins Spider Gwen's team. Kind of realizes that what she's doing with Miguel is a little fucked up. Yeah, man, that's it, man. It goes to credits. There's no post credit scene. There's no mid credit scene. You get nothing. You get nothing. Lebowski. And yeah, man, that's the end. You just get left with that. Uh, Again, there's a handful of people like, what the fuck? Like, wait, what? That's it. So I'm very curious how ultimately this lands with people. For me, it's like a classic example of it's like Lego movie. This is like Lego Movie 2 bad, in my opinion. Like where it's like you had no business making this. Like what what are you thinking? Like the first one's just nice. It's gold. It's fine. Just leave it alone. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And there's gonna be a lot of people that love it. And look, I'm not an idiot. I appreciate that there's a cultural significance to Miles and all that. That's great. See yourself in it. I mean, for just the sake of description, so these two little skinny white boys and Miles Morales esque Spider-Man outfits went to take a picture in front of the poster after the movie. They were so ecstatic, put a big smile on my face. I was like, that's just nice, man. Like, kids being kids. My point being is like, look, like they don't look like the character, right? But like they see themselves in the character. Obviously, both of these boys were willing to do something embarrassing as hell and do this picture. It's almost commendable. And then I got another kid walking out who goes, his dad goes, "What'd you think of the movie?" And the kid goes, "It was awful. It was awful. They need to get to the big fight scene at the end." And he's got some legitimate criticisms. This movie was not advertised as a two-parter, so at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know what you were thinking there, but for me, yeah, it's a solid fail, flop, flat on its face. It's that's not how it's gonna go down in the history books. It's gonna make a bunch of money. I went and saw it on premiere night, and I didn't even like it. I loved the first one, but I didn't like this one. Uh, so I don't know. Maybe like we'll see, right? If the second weekend's shitty, if it has that usual 60%, like 65% drop, then that's definitely bad word of mouth. Because I feel like these days, if you get more than that on your second weekend, it's like, oh, you got good word of mouth. Like people were like, nah, like this movie's good. Go see it. It's not shit. But I don't think enough people, like, if you love this Miles Morales and Into the Spider Verse iteration, yeah, you're gonna go for it. Like, why wouldn't you? You should. But ultimately, whew, I don't know, man. Like, I don't think for a lot of people it's gonna hit. I think it was an interesting and almost like sleazy, underhanded decision to make it like a two-part. It's a two-parter movie. It ends on a full-on cliffhanger, and you're like what am I supposed to do with this? So take that with a grain of salt. When Beyond the Spider Verse comes out, who the hell knows? But for me, I just didn't care enough to like do clips of this movie and actually do a full on review. So that's why this is gonna be a rant. I might clean it up a little bit and republish it, but this is mainly gonna be it. My drunken and look, in my state, it's okay. But these are my thoughts on Across the Spider Verse, and they're not great. Oh boy, yeah, it kind of fucking sucked, man. Look, if you wanted to tick off the guys who are like, "I'm the woke," you definitely did it with this movie. You did it, like for sure. I didn't think it was like all that political and shit. Like again, even like one of the more like obviously like produced like or sorry like presentation wise political characters is Jessica Drew, but like she's actually a pretty good character. I enjoy her arc. I liked her in the movie, Um and Miles is the shit, man. Like I like him, I like him especially in this iteration. He's really enjoyable, but it really fell flat for me, man. It was really unfocused. It just didn't have the charm of the first movie, and it just didn't have like the like clear plot of the first one where like the first you're like, oh, like Fisk is like trying to get his family back. Miles in the middle of that. There's all this mess going on, these other spider people. What the hell is gonna happen as a result of it all? But like with this one, you're just like, again, you're going from like bit to bit to bit. It's like, oh, like now we're with Gwen. Now we're with Miles dealing with his family. Now we're with multi spider people. Now the multi spider people are going after like Miles. Now Miles is like gone over to back to his reality. Oh, the reality's written the other spider's DNA. He's in the wrong reality. Oh my god, Gwen's in his reality. She's got to get the band back together. Uh yeah, man. It's it's just like one thing after another, but there's not a lot of like thread line or connection besides the Deus Ex Machina that they build into it. And I'll give them credit. I'll give them credit. There's a lot that I respect about that. Like they did a pretty decent job of weaving their Deus Ex Machina into that, like being like, okay, here's the villain, here's how it ties in, here's how it worked with the first one. But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, like that's like the sleaziest, dumbest fuck way to fucking do something is be like, oh, this was going on the whole time, by the way, in the first one. Especially because, and again, like I've seen it a few times, and I kept thinking to myself, like I don't remember a lot of this all that much. And I'm sure there's like the scenes they referenced and stuff. But it's like, does it really feel like Spot is like set up in the first one where it's like, oh, this is gonna be a big thing. Second one, nah, I don't think so. So, take it for what you will. But I don't care, man. Like if you loved it, but please leave a comment. Let me know below. Be like, I fucking love this thing, man. You're fucking crazy. But if you, yeah, I mean, if you didn't enjoy it as much, like just let me know too. If you agreed, sure. If you disagree, like yeah, like do that. Like I'm always happy to be like, yeah, well, like yeah, I get that. You know, you can feel differently about it than me. I don't care. That's fine. That's good. I think that's look. I know there's a lot of these streamers from all over the world, but I stream out of the cradle of America, Philadelphia. So we are always going to respect freedom here on these streams, and that's that. Miles Morales is very cool. This movie had a mixed message of Miles Morales being better off being Miles Morales. That was literally like a big message in this movie. Is like, well, why be Spider-Man when you can be Miles Morales? Which is almost the antithesis of a lot of this like stuff people argue about online. But hey man, I was entertained watching it. Again, I saw it at 5:30 at my local theater. So it didn't cost me a whole chunk of time, and I was out of there by 8:30. But damn, man, like it's gonna do well this first weekend. But where will it go the second weekend? How will people ultimately receive this movie? And did you like it? Please let me know. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones. Miles Morales is Miles Morales. That's a fact. If Sony wants to continue to use him in Spider-Man movies, he'll be Miles Morales as Spider-Man, but Marvel is not allowed to do that without Sony's permission. So creates an interesting situation, and we'll see how that goes. I'm 5 beers deep. Hopefully, hopefully it kept up along, or again, if not, you enjoyed your own drink. But in the meantime, we'll see you on the next one. All right.